Welcome to Discerning News, where we bring you current stories from a bigger picture perspective. The purpose is to inspire clarity and enthusiasm for your unique journey. Welcome back to another episode of Spiritual Perspectives, Discerning News. You guys ready?
We're ready.
Sounds great. I'm ready to go.
And this is number 10 for us. So,
Yeah.
wow, 10 weeks you've been doing this.
Yes. Goes
Wow.
by. It's like yesterday, really. Just got started.
And I've been holding my fire all day so that I can say some really
Ready to go.
some great insights and share them with people.
All right, well, let's do it. So let's start this beautiful episode with Tiger's got a good story to share. So go at us, Tiger. Let's hear it.
All right. The first story is about the G20 get together. This is kind of not a big story that would directly affect everyone in whatever country you're in, but it has an effect. And I wanted to just bring it up. I thought it felt appropriate to talk about. And I think from our discernment, I think we'll come up with some interesting things. So you may have heard that term thrown around, G20, from time to time, sometimes in the news. What is the G20? The G20 actually it just stands for the group of 20. G20.
Group of
The
20.
group of 20. But basically it's 20, the 20 largest economies of the world all meeting. That's the bottom line of it. And it was originally pulled together in 1999 after the Asian market crisis. And so there was this desire to get together and help to keep things from destabilizing, things like that. So all the finance ministers of the countries would get together and in hopes to communicate, coordinate, see how they can back and trade, help each other. This was the spirit of it all. Since then, it's expanded into other areas where they're including things like to promote growth and development, get rid of inequality and poverty, and then also kind of more fresh things like climate change and development, things like that. It's expanded its role, but the original inspiration actually had to do with bringing some of the top economic people together of the countries and have that regrouping in essence and check things that are coming into the future. So of late, what happened was there really wasn't anything pulled together. They normally have an annual meeting, and a lot of the key people for the different countries didn't show up. So there wasn't really able to have any consensus or any communications out to the public as well as each other. So that was kind of the big news that happened. They're still had the same kind of mandate, but basically they just weren't able to get together and come to any kind of decisions that they normally do. And that part of all that is the change that's been happening from different countries, particularly America, but other countries as well. So that's the raw facts of it. From a discernment perspective, what are some of the energies that you pick up?
Well, it's interesting because the energies I pick up are around teamwork and around the potential of what teamwork can bring to a situation. And especially something like this, where it's about the economies and about finances or whatever, the bigger picture things that a lot of nations have to put together for their people, right? And so working as a team, it can create or it can destroy different aspects around, nations of what they wanted to do and come together. So, and that's the same with teamwork. Like, especially right now, I feel there's a gravitation towards like-minded people, a gravitation towards, how can I gather my tribe, my apprentices, my journeymen, people that are ready to hear what I'm sharing or the services that I'm offering in the world. And this can be for anyone. This doesn't have to be just like a business. This can be like, my service is to care for children. My service is to care for my elderly parents or whatever it looks like. But coming together with other people for that reason, a bigger picture reason like the G20, really can access a lot of energy that you may not think is there, I think that's really comes to me. And also the fact that, like you're saying, like some of the bigger, like, you know, America and whoever else didn't show up. Well, there's oftentimes too when the energy shifts,
Right.
and and you know, the energetic aspects of what initially it came together to produce, or came together to, you know, to really have a have more clarity around. When things start shifting, that's when the dynamics of teamwork starts shifting. So there's a lot of pieces, but I guess for myself, it's really around the energy of teamwork. And I know for myself that I've recognized that, especially moving back into a job where I'm a part of a team of 80. There, you know, it's a beautiful area that I'm working, because I'm working in accounting, and I'm working with, you know, what the part that I am doing is part of the entire team. So I guess that's a big part, and just recognizing the power behind teamwork. Yeah.
Tom?
Hey, team.
Hello.
My team. Want to say next?
Well, I'm sitting here and I'm saying to myself, okay, yeah, it doesn't surprise me they didn't come up with anything. So what that says to me is that they're a little rudderless right now, and that there's a regrouping that's going on, and people aren't sure. And one of the reasons the leader hasn't, and the strategy and the plan hasn't really come to the fore. So I imagine that with the new administration and talks of tariffs and the reciprocal tariffs, for example, that they're getting themselves organized as to if the United States wasn't there. So the United States wasn't there. Did they attend? Do you know?
No, I think they did not.
Okay, so the United States doesn't know how they want to approach this yet. But what's so interesting to me is it really says the G20 needs a leader, and until that happens, they don't know what they're going to do, and so it's very telltale, that whether we like it or not, the U.S. economy and the U.S. Market drives a lot and the U.S. strategy, drives a lot. So that's what I see is the team. They don't know how to respond yet, and there's probably mixed feelings and all that kind of thing. So now that's all okay. From my point of view, is that it's okay for people to say, wait, I don't quite know. I'm bringing it back to myself now. I don't quite know where I stand on this now, or what are all the facts, or what's going to sort of play out. And I noticed that in my own life, sometimes, when I check with spirit, if there's something I really want to get done, and there's some goals that I have, which are kind of reoccurring goals throughout my life. There's been times when my guidance has said, and Teresa's heard me say this, I think, it's not all formed yet. Here I'm sort of come on, spirit, I want to get this done. I want to do this. I want to do that. And I have to be patient to allow the energy to kind of form. And then there's other times when I tune into the energy of what's happening, and it's really easy. Like, oh, I know what's coming down the road now. I'm already seeing the signs. And guess what? It comes down the road. So I've really learned to trust myself in those areas. But the times that I have maybe put pressure on myself is when I haven't, and spirit isn't even discerning yet which way things are going to kind of play out. Because, as souls, we all have free will. And, as teams and as souls in mass, or as countries, there's always a free will aspect. I mean, decisions might be made in one part of the world, which, they say the butterfly effect, but I've just really seen this to be true. I mean, the energy can be kind of lined up for something to fall into place, but if it isn't totally formed, or people aren't fully committed yet, or not enough energies committed towards that, or really has got that desire to magnetize themselves towards it, it's not going to happen. So, to me, I don't see it as a good thing. I don't see it as a bad thing that they didn't make any decisions. It just says they're a little rudderless right now. And so, interestingly enough, like if I was an investor, I'd keep that in mind.
Right.
I'd keep that in mind. And they do. Like these guys are smart that get involved in investing in big ways around the world. I mean, they use their sensitivity and they pay attention to the signs. So I guess for me, it's how do I bring this to myself? Just like pay attention to the signs, have the hope for teamwork, and realize that whilst I come in and go out alone, I am also working with a lot of souls at a lot of different levels of consciousness while I'm here. And that's what I have to say about that.
And that's all you have to say about that. Yeah, just a couple things, and most of you picked up on some of my points already. One is just the confirmation of what we've been talking about since we started this podcast, which is there are plenty of shifts going on, and they're going to keep going on. And this is another indication of that. So that's
a good point. It's another sign of the shifts.
Another proof positive kind of thing. The other thing too is that there is this movement to go inward, right? There is this need to start rechecking. Hey, I'm telling someone over here to do this, but are we doing that? It's like before, there's an old Asian saying, it says, before seeking to go improve the world, check your own house 3 times, So it's like we've been riding this wave for a long time now of where we've just really had a lot of positive things and a lot of building, a lot of growing spiritually, economically, all this kind of thing. And now the energy is starting to shift, like, let's kind of come back and take a look inward here. Let's make sure that we're solid before we move forward. And I think that's an aura that's starting to happen, for lack of a better word. It's a feeling that's happening everywhere. Let me recheck myself. And those who still are seeking the old way, they're going to have challenges with this, which was your point, is that when the shifts start happening and that's messing up my old way of how I used to think, or my, how I used to have my picture set, or whatever it is. So that's just something to be aware of, again, as a reminder that this is the environment we're in. And there's nothing I'm going to complain about or have some big moral issue about. It's kind of like having the moral issue that, the sun's going to come up tomorrow. It sounds ridiculous, but it's fighting against something that's going to happen whether I like it or not. So there's a shifts going on. That's another point. And another key point has to do is, more specifically, like, how is this going to affect me? How do I take this story and make it? One has to do with being clear with my loyalties, right? I need to know what my loyalties are. If I don't have those clear, then I'm just going to have troubles, right? And there's that the whole thing about my first loyalty is to myself, and my second loyalty is to my unit or close environment. My third loyalty is to the big picture, or, your flag, or whatever, And if I'm having trouble in any one of those places out there, I can track it back to what I'm doing to myself. That's what it kind of comes down to. So if I'm in the habit of looking outward,
right,
for someone to save me or fix me, or someone to do that for me when I'm feeling moved to do it, but I'm not going to do it because I want someone to, I'm going to have troubles, because the outer environment eventually will say, well, if you want me to do it, then I'm going to be in charge of it, right? So it all sounds good at first. It's kind of like, the people who give you the little bit of drugs, is the first one's for free. And all of a sudden you get hooked, right? And it's that same addiction to wanting something out there before I have it all sorted out in here. So there's nothing wrong with receiving help. That's not what I'm talking about. But if I get used to trying to take care of the other gal or guy without making sure my own backyard is clean and clear, I got troubles. Right? This is an indicative of that. The other thing that came to me on this little story here is about playing the game. We throw that out in this program. That term is used a lot. Play the game. Play the game of life. Play the game, right? It's not a game you can win. You just play the game, right? And if I understand the rules of the game, in other words, to say who I am, why I'm here, what the opportunity is, right? That makes it a whole lot easier, right? It just makes it so much easier. And, that's in the link down below. We talk about that in the lecture series.
You mean the video series?
The video series about, the playing the game of life, science, religion, and society, how I express myself. And all of that is built on where my loyalties are and respect, right? And there's so much more detail in there. I won't go into it, but it just shows itself here in this story a lot. And the other thing too is being sensitive when there is the shifting going on that you were bringing up, how easy it is for things to go out of balance, right? So this group originally just got started because there was a financial crisis in the Asian markets, and they said, hey, let's get together so we can maybe help each other, right? It was just that simple thing. And then all of a sudden, now we have this thing about ending poverty, and now we're going to fix the climate, and now and all those things are good, right? There's the goodness in the concepts of them. But if I stray too far from the inspiration that I came with, I'm going to get involved in all kinds of stuff, and I'll go out of balance. And particularly, again, in the video series, the out of balance intuitive gift. We all have all four gifts: intuitive, visionary, prophetic, feeling gift. We all have all these gifts. But in particular, the one that stands out to me on this particular story is the out of balance intuitive, which they become possessive. When they're out of balance, they are possessive of their ideas. And that's the classic thing. You'll see people who in their own intuitive gifts, it's that whole joke about saying you can do whatever you want as long as you do it my way, right? It's the funny story, but that's that energy where I've been doing something a certain way, and then I become possessive of the whole concept of it, the whole idea of it, and I can't change readily. I don't have that flexibility, and I can no longer lead. I get drugged along. So instead of leading with inspiration, I end up getting drugged because I'm holding on to those old ideas. So to me, this whole story brings me back home to say, let me remember why I'm here. Let me have that teamwork with people. That's a great way that you said it. I have that teamwork with the people I've come to work with, and then make sure I recheck it. There's nothing wrong with rechecking. I mean, how often do we stay with a group or certain things too long because the energy's dried up? Or maybe the energy hasn't dried up, but something needs to change, right? I need to change, the other situation needs to change, and then it can have life again. But if I'm not sensitive to those needs, right? To be able to move with the tide, move with the flow, I'm just going to be a part of the pollution instead of part of the solution. So that's the story. Anything else before we take a break?
I think we're good.
All right. In just a minute, we're going to come back for our next news story. Stay tuned.
When you gravitate towards trust, life moves with more grace and ease. One way is staying in the now and mastering your inner world, those psychic perceptions that show up through feelings, knowings, hearing, and seeing. If you are ready for more clarity for your direction in life, by honoring your time and trust, check out the link in the show notes for our next Intuition Now Masterclass, where we explore your inner abilities and support you in getting your own answers and start trusting in yourself.
All right, we're back and ready for our next story from Tom. Hit it, Tom.
Well, I'm looking forward to sharing the story because I've got two related stories. Well, kind of an initial story from one of our listeners who suggested an article that came out by Bloomberg and written by a fellow named, I just want to make sure this is right, but Mr. Feldman, Hugh Feldman, I think his name is. So, am I not quite close to the mic? Okay, good. Let me get this sorted, folks. So I'll just read the little note that they sent to us. It says, thought of you when I saw this op-ed. You may not be interested in this for your podcast, but here is an opinion about the resilience of our system. The new administration is a great stress test on the three branches of government. And there's a suggestion about talking about our inner government and living in balance according to personal policies and procedures. So I'll summarize this. The title of the article is Donald Trump is stress testing our constitutional system. It's doing fine. And I'll characterize this columnist as definitely comes more from the liberal side of things, more from the left, more from the Democrat side of things. And he's got an opinion that he's a lawyer, he's a professor of law, and that some of the things that Trump's doing, are illegal, or unlawful. And but he makes the point, and I'd like to read this: when these stresses are introduced into the system, the courts swing into action and block Trump's overreach, in his opinion. Our Congress protests, or is supposed to, that the president can't override federal laws that direct spending or establish agencies. If those things happen, the system it calibrates. Anyways, checks and balances is my short way of saying it. Instead of degrading, the stress test shows the system works, which might need some fixing. And the question for our democracy right now is the same one that arises during any stress test. Will our heart hold out? And this fellow's bet is on survival. So now, to be clear, this fellow has a point of view that's different than mine and not my preferences, but I thought it's a great story to talk about the checks and balances of the three systems of government that we have. And so I'll turn it over to the next commentator before I.
All right. Yeah. So this is when we were talking before we got on to the podcast. We were talking about how this affected many different other stories, and there was kind of this clump of stories that we're talking about. And for those of you that aren't in the United States, America has this system where we have three branches of government, and that is meant to have create a balance and a check and balance to make sure that one didn't have more power, right? There wasn't this runaway situation, and it's worked well for us in America. The American system is based on the Constitution, the American Constitution, which is the oldest constitution in the world. There's been other constitutions, but none of them have lasted.
I was going to say, I was in Egypt and my constitution was good.
Yeah, but none of them. What happens is
I was a Mayan and the constitution was good.
People get into power and then they change the constitution or they get rid of it or stuff. And so it's been one of the oldest constitutions. And so that in itself creates its own ups and downs, right? So if you have other constitutions that lasted a little bit, but not as long as the American one, then it's different than the psyche of the world, right? It's just different. Most of they don't last that long. So it just takes, there's pressure there because the Americans have gone past what other people have done when it comes to the Constitution. So that's just something for me to be aware of, is that there's something solid there to work off of. And the big thing I was picking up from when you were sharing this, Tom, was the operative word was stress, the stress test, right? And so, after you have a couple cycles and you kind of learn the system, and whether regardless of what country you're in, you kind of settle down with this stuff and you realize, well, then the next one is going to come through and it's going to be a big deal, and they're going to tear everything up, and oh my God, everything's falling apart, my predecessor used to say, that the real difference is that everything's able to come into my lap. The 24-hour news cycle, everything's able to come right into my lap. So they tell you that the world is falling apart, and you forget that the world was falling apart for thousands of years, but so it's just for me to be aware that if I'm starting to get to the point where I'm actually feeling stressed, then I've put my loyalties outside of myself. I'm starting to now become dependent on something that was there to help me become independent, right? And that's the listener who sent this article in. She's bringing up that point about inner government, and that whole spiritually, not materially, spiritually, the whole point of government is to help me with my inner government. That is the whole point. So, because I can't take it with me, right? There's no point in is that it's gone. As a matter of fact, if I try to hold on to that kind of thing, I'm going to get confused, right? I mean, gravity will have me. I won't be able to get out, right? So that whole thing about inner government is so important. It's so important. Imagine if I check in first with myself whenever I'm feeling stressed or there's something going on, and I go, hang on, which part do I need to be sensitive to and take care of that, right? Where's my own police system? Where's my own economics? Where's my own, rules and regulations? Like, these are all things that the outer is helping me develop inside. And then once I start having them inside, it's so much easier to play the game because I can respect it, right? I respect it because I have my own rules and regulations. I respect the rules and regulations out there because I know the value of it. And I guess my wrap-up part of this is, I think all of us here and probably all of you listening and watching, you probably don't need the lines on the road to drive, right? You probably don't need that. You've had enough experience. You probably don't need that. In other words, if a car's coming, you know not to get into that lane, right? If you're in the Elizabethan countries, you drive on the left side. And if you're in the Americans or the France or where you drive on the right side, so not to get in that side. And out here, we happen to be doing this in Iowa, and we got dirt roads out here. And there's other places like that. There's no line on the road. So if you see a big tractor coming and that tractor happens to be on the right side, the left side of the road, it's in front of you, you move over.
Right.
I mean, it's not like, I'm going to stop the car and make a big stink out of like, you got to get on the correct side of the road. Like, you move over, okay, great, let him pass. There's a working guy, let him go and do his thing, and you move on, So I don't need the lines on the road per se. I know how to drive. I know not to get in front of the other car. But that being said, there are people out there who are still trying to figure it out, and they're still trying to learn the rules of the game. And I kind of like the lines on the road for those folks. I kind of like that. So in other words, I don't have a big moral issue anymore because I have my own respect for myself and people. And so I no longer going to get overly stressed by what these people are doing or what the government's going to do or not do, because I realize I have my own system, my own inner government. And that's what is the difference. And with that clear, then I can move smoothly through it.
Okay, so this is really a pretty cool article that I'm glad one of our listeners sent it in, because even like Tom was saying, it's really more on the liberal side or the left side versus the Republican side or whatever. It just really brought up some good keys for myself around the stress and a stress test. And one key that I noticed that Tom had mentioned about was, our heart. So to me, the heart is about our drive. And for the last couple of years, I've noticed that a lot of people, well, we'll say for COVID, right? There was a lot about around the heart, a lot of things going on with, heart issues and heart attacks. And a lot of people I feel have lost their drive and knowing how to move forward with all these different things that are coming at us. So these stories we're sharing today, we've got the first one was about the G20, which is the world, right? And this one is really about our government of America. So whatever stories you're listening to, whatever stories you're engaging around you throughout your day, it really is a litmus test of how stressed do I feel as I'm hearing that? How relaxed am I feeling as I'm hearing that? And I can tell you from firsthand that a lot of people are not very relaxed around what's going on and what's coming at us each day. So for myself and for the people that I, guide through some of the classes we do and some of the offerings we have, is it's imperative right now to really grab a hold of that unseen part of you, the spiritual part, because that for myself has been something that I've been able to, I keep my aura cleansed. I'm able to discern what's me, what's not me, what's making me feel stressed right now. Oh, that's not me. And so really understanding and gathering these insights for yourself, like Tiger mentioned the 4 gifts earlier, understanding how your intuition works, understanding how you connect with your guides, understanding how, you really move through this world in that way can really give you so much backing to get through these litmus tests of stress. And so that's really where I wanted to go with this, and just, recognizing that in the midst of all that we're talking about every single week, it really boils back down to, for us, is around that spiritual perspective. So that's really where I wanted to go in this wonderful article that you had from a listener, and the fact that this is just one way that I found, and also they can probably attest too. We found this really worked for our lives, and it's helped us get through these moments of stress, no matter what it looks like, no matter if it looks like a gentleman talking about the government, G20, other stories we've shared in the past. It's all boils down to, how am I going to get through everything that I'm here to work with in this game and stay relaxed and peaceful while I do it?
I agree. It's the difference between just surviving and thriving.
Definitely.
So, is that my turn?
Your turn.
All right. Well, the gentleman's name that wrote the article is Noah Feldman, by the way. And it wasn't Hugh, it's Noah. And it's a Bloomberg. You can find it online. I'll have a link in the show notes if you want to read it. Essentially, with the checks and balances in the government, the system was set up so that not one branch had all the power. And because of this idea that, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, I think it's a Greek saying, it's an old saying. And the older I get, that seems to be so true. There's people get drunk with power, and even good people at first, So now he comes it from the legalistic point of view. And we were talking about gifts, and one of the things that struck me was this is a very out of balance prophetic kind of idea, getting moral issues and legalistic, and who struck John. And one of the ways I can tell is because as I read the article, I started to get into I started arguing it in my head. And that's just your opinion. And, that's, in fact, that hasn't borne to be true. And, I almost wanted to go back and forth, and, I can illuminate, because apparently this article was written sort of early February, like the first few days of February. And even since that time, like one of the moral issues was that the Trump administration had paused funding, froze funding. And so then as part of our checks and balances, the federal judge said, no, you can't do that. In his opinion, somebody sued and they made a case, they made an argument. And so that it then went to the Supreme Court because, of course, the administration said, no, we think we have a right to do that. And in fact, on February 26th, which is just a day or yesterday, another friend of mine sent me an article, and it was very interesting because both these listeners live in the Washington, D.C. area. So the second article is more from the point of view of that, the Supreme Court did decide it is okay. And a lot of the issues that this fellow mentioned in he kind of listed a litany of things the new administration's trying to do and saying some of that's not legal. And one of the things that struck me was that, when I hear somebody say something and I tune into it and I go, it's great they said that, but they'll never be able to get that through. I can feel it. I can feel that there's more to that issue. And maybe I'm for it. Maybe, I think there's a good point there. But I don't waste a lot of time over concerned about things that may never happen, and from both sides of politics. And I guess the thing that I hear you both sharing is that over the years, no matter who's in power, if the side that I prefer is not in power and the philosophy that I prefer is not in power, I could have felt stressed out about it, but I've kind of learned to play the game, but not get caught up in the game.
Right.
But I also noticed how, I almost got drug into the thinking and the Who Struck John, and I started going down the intellectual. And the truth is that none of that stuff right now is my opportunity, my primary opportunity. I mean, my opportunity to be aware of it and I can root for which I have my thoughts on what I think is best for everybody and that kind of thing. But, my opportunity really is a lot closer to home. And, what I hear you saying is that I can't take, if I'd have checked out during an administration that I didn't prefer, none of that was going to change what I'm going to regroup about my life when I'm on the other side,
Right.
That's probably the best way to say it, and on the other hand, if I check out, in fact, I'm wise enough to know that even if great changes are made by this current administration, they're not going to last forever. I mean, maybe they can last another 4 years, or maybe there'll be a wave of, a certain political philosophy. But over time, the pendulum will swing right back the other way, which I've seen over the, more than 45 years I've been really paying any attention to politics and that kind of thing. So I really, what resonates with me is when Tiger was sharing, I'm not going to take any of that with me. It's all just a means to an end, and the end is for me to learn more about my inner government, my checks and balances. And as one of our listeners brought up, what are my policies and procedures? And that's one of the things that we look at spiritually when we work with people is we check with spirit as to the positive policies that we all come in with. And then we, sometimes evaluate, am I, dedicating my life or to a cause or living policies that are outside of me? So either devotion or other people's policies, and rather than my own policies. And so, my first policy is purpose. I have a second one, creative and honest. And I have procedures to follow those policies, So they're positive things. That's my policy is I'm going to have a purpose. For example, tonight I was like, what's my purpose in sharing this? Well, it's really partly is for me to understand myself more and share with others and give a little bit of hope. That's the key word that I picked up, hope for myself too, as well as others, that there's more to it.
Okay.
I think I've said enough because I can
You can tell.
feel it. Yeah. I get the
We
look
are
from the
sensitive
moderator.
people.
So we're going to take a quick break, and Teresa's got the wonderful opportunity of bringing you a positive story. She likes that. That's her niche. So we'll be right back after this short message.
When you arrived back, you were enthusiastic to be here. If you've lost some of that enthusiasm, there's a way to reawaken it. It's by embracing a bigger spiritual picture of your life as a soul and igniting the feeling of freedom within. If you're ready and needing some more enthusiastic mojo for yourself, then follow the link in the show notes to access a free video series created by the Way Showers College and get ready to start feeling more clarity, hope, and freedom within.
All right, we're back. And now we're coming back to our last segment, which is the inspirational story of the week. Teresa.
Inspirational story of the week.
I found a pretty good one this week.
Another, you always pick good ones.
I don't know how. It's one of those spiritual things. So today's story comes from Brazil, specifically Rio de Janeiro, and the slums. We don't want to go to the slums.
No, but I'd like to go to Rio.
Yes, to go to Rio. Okay.
And they're dancing in the streets.
Mardi Gras.
Mardi Gras on the streets.
Yeah.
Okay. So the facts of this story, Tom, is that most of these kids, well, first off, I'll give you a scenario. So in the slums, it's like a concrete jungle. So Brazil and the Amazon, that's a big jungle, but this is a concrete jungle. There are a lot of poverty. There's a lot of kids there that have no interaction with forests, with greenery, and honestly have no respect for it. There's actually a culture of destruction right now going on in this area. So there's been a wonderful gentleman named Luis Silva who has created something called Tito Verde Favela, which means green roofs. And he's created these green rooftops in these settlement areas of the slums of Rio. And it has made such a transition in the people there because the green color of verde helps reduce violence and helps de-stress people. And it also helps people feel good. So that's the story. That's the facts of the story. So how does that make you feel, Tom?
Great.
Want some salsa verde?
Well, I know that as a visionary, that's my first gift. You know, I love watching things grow and the regeneration of things. And I love nature. And that's one of the characteristics of being a visionary, that we like to be in beautiful environments and so forth. And in my lifetime, I was always inspired to work with little animals and, you know, create natural areas and that kind of thing. So, and I love where we live because we're kind of, you know, out there a little bit. We're not in the middle of a, you know,
concrete jungle,
or we're not I've always found that difficult. You know, when I went to school, university, I was in the middle of a city in Milwaukee at Marquette, and I never liked it. But I lived with it because I had a bigger purpose at that time. So, no, I love these stories. And, you know, I guess what strikes me is that what I'm really tuning into is that feeling of like just doing a little thing again, you know, just, you know, doing a little bit of cleaning up or a little bit of planting some plants. And then one little thing leads to another. And then all of a sudden I'm beautifying my neighborhood and I'm getting more ideas. And then I notice my neighbors start getting stimulated in that way, and they start cleaning up and they start fixing up. And, you know, it's a wonderful thing to see. And there's just so much, you know, when it comes down to it, there's just, there's fulfillment in it. There's just like, it's a good feeling. And this is, you know, it's not like a big deal emotional thing. It's just a nice, good feeling, that kind of like that feeling like it makes it worthwhile to get up in the morning or to, you know, to be involved with people. So, you know, we talk a lot about feeling and intellect, and, you know, in our world, it's really important that we have a way to get back into our true feelings. And it's as simple as feeling rejuvenated within. You know, I like renewable energy. And one of the things that struck me is I'm probably attracted to that because I love the idea of renewing my energy every day. And that's what strikes me about your story.
This is it's actually a very simple story when I went over it. It's actually very straightforward, very simple. And Brazil and Rio, it's such an amazing place. It's a huge population in there, and if you've ever been there, there's poverty. I mean, it's real people. We think, oh, we got poverty here. We don't have poverty here if we contrast some other places. So there's proper poverty there, and indeed, they're all stacked up. And if you see the picture of this article, you can really see how everything's really tight, and how this gentleman built this almost mini jungle on top of the roof, and how it's helping with the, keeping the heat down in the house, and keeping the water from rushing off and so forth. So there's a lot of benefits there. But the thing that I'm going to carry on what you brought up, Tom, about how someone who just started something simple, right? And that built to something else. And then before you know it, you got the whole roof covered, and how that affects the environment, right? Because it gets into you as a habit, right? It gets into me as a habit. And another way to say that, if come from the sensitive world or the metaphysical world, it's like it gets into your aura, right? However you want to describe it, but your consciousness starts becoming a part of it. And so it just becomes normal for this guy particularly to just plant stuff and move stuff and then show it to other people and pass it on. And so that's the power for me. What I get out of this story is, if I just stay on track with what I want to be a part of, it's amazing how that affects the community. It's amazing how it affects people. And in particular, the story was just talking about, as you brought up, the young people who have, this is a very ironic thing. I mean, if I did have the chance to go to Brazil and Rio, and it's like, you got to drive a bit, but once you start getting out there, I mean, you're in jungle, baby. I mean, this is like, you got the Amazon forest and the whole thing. I mean, this is the real thing. But you do have to get out, So the irony is that here is this fabulous forests and jungles out there, and they have all these young people who no connection with it at all, This is the interesting thing about it. But this gentleman allowing to get people back in touch with the basics, back with the whole foundations of what we sometimes take for granted for those people who are, more around nature. It's amazing how that affects people. And we were in our last story, we were talking about the stress, right? Just coming back down to just being able to feel the wind and touch a leaf and be in that environment. It's a very powerful thing if I'm stressed out, and even today, knowing all I know, sometimes I just have to go outside and sit and just feel the sun on my face or feel the wind. It just really does kind of have that renewal, which is my key word for the day, is to that renewal, coming back home, right? Just coming back inside. And then I do have that balance. But I guess my wrap up with the inspirational story is just how easy and simple it is to just do something that I enjoy doing, build on it, and pass it on, and how that can positively affect the people around me.
Yeah. So for myself, the key thing, and like you were mentioning, the picture of it, and we'll have the link down below in the show notes if you want to check out this picture of the amazing garden this guy had and all the slums around it, is the beautification of really a pretty horrific area, looking area. Yeah. And like this is such a simple thing, but it really just brings forth that, the aspect that these kids, they don't, and other people do not see this beautification around them. So what inspired me about that was that the picture for one thing. And also, just like the bee story last week, like I love touching base with people that are out in the world doing small things in their area. And the key word that comes up for myself around that is building that momentum. So whatever it is, if it's, making a garden on top of a house in a slum, oh my God, that's amazing. Or if it's like last week in the bees and helping make, bee hotels, or, whatever it is, there are people out in the world that are doing these small acts of, I want to say acts of God around, making the world a better place. And leaving it maybe a little bit better in their area for the next generation to come. And, in the day-to-day routines, the day-to-day, places we go to, a lot of times we don't see this. A lot of times, and I'll be one to say too, the people I'm around sometimes maybe aren't the happiest people, or they're people that have a lot of, they don't feel so good, or they're, out of sorts energetically. And believe me, I see a lot of out of sorts energetically people every single day on the streets and different places I'm at. And recognizing that there are people out there in the world really doing some amazing things just inspires me so much. So yes, Tiger, like you said, it was definitely a simple story, but it was profound when I found it. Beautiful. So anything else you want to say, Tom? I feel like there's something else you want to say.
Yeah, it's just that, it strikes me, it's, like now that is something that person has some control over, or some,
right.
And I get chills on that, not that the healing of that, just me being relaxed or me being in that sense of that true concern that I have within, that's a healing vibration. And if I really want to do some healing, that's a great place to start.
Well, especially when most people don't feel any control in their life, or they feel out of control a lot.
Yeah, start by, when these things are happening around us and, it's not to our preferences or liking, for all kind of reasons. And I understand, you don't, certain things you would like to keep it the same, but just work with what you do have some control over and just take that first step and then take the second step and then take the third step.
Hey, you said that earlier too, Tiger. We're talking about steps here. He sure did. Awesome. So that's, I think, the end of our episode today. So our spiritual perspectives, discerning news. Yeah. So let's go around and, what was anything you want to share last, thoughts of the episode?
Yeah, I think in my conclusion or wrapping up the whole thing, what really stood out to me was the key words or key phrase, love and respect. I think that's coming to me, and doing my part. All of this was, particularly these three stories this week, really was able to bring this specifically back home to what am I going to do? How's this working with me? And if I'm able to do that with everything that comes around, then I am truly going to be able to take the steps to what I need to do. And I'm in charge of my energy, and I don't get stressed out. I don't fall out of balance to, too much in my head or too much in my heart. I need to have that balance. And if I'm not allowing that, then the bottom line is I can get caught on the outside, and I'm not actually having the love and the respect for people because I'm not doing it for myself. So it's just making sure, going back to your point about, I just need make sure I have a little bit of understanding for the feeling that I have. And for every understanding, I need to have an experience to match them up and not just operate off of one. So that's the wrap up, I'd say, for me for this week is love and respect.
What about you, Tom?
Well, for me, it's, play the game, but don't get caught up in the playing or don't get owned by it, just from the point of view of I'm so entangled in the game that I can't, see daylight kind of a thing, or it becomes stressful. And it strikes me that, we live in a world where they want to keep us competing, and we love to call fouls on the team that, hey, they didn't call a foul because we're losing and now we feel it's unfair.
Right.
But as soon as, I think what like an inner discipline is an inner check on me is I have to come back to, and some of that's fun. We love to compete and we love to yell at the ref and, there's a little bit of fun there too. But I have to come back to what's my purpose.
Right.
And we all, as souls, we say we're here to learn and grow, but we all have a specific thrust of an energy pattern that we're moving with. Mine's to be happy and free. I have my own policies that I came to live. And so no matter what I'm encountering out there, even if I am caught up in the game of the legal system or, power trips, or if I'm part of that energy, tune back into what is my true spiritual purpose is just, getting back to that positive feeling
Yes.
of why you're involved. It's not like a complex mystical thing. It's getting back to that last story, this little positive feeling of that rejuvenation and renewable energy inside of me.
Yeah, and for myself, I would say it's about stressing less so you can access more of that heart energy for the drive of what you've really come to do.
Yeah.
So we thank you so much for listening in and watching us. And we also want to just say out there, hey, thanks again for those that sent in some stories this week. And if you had found a story, you go, I'd like them to focus and share it, please feel free to send it to us. We would love to share it. You could, connect with us. We've got our email. We can share with that in the show notes too. So you can, drop us an email and let us know what you'd like us to share about. And we'd be more than happy to do that.
Yeah.
Right?
Love it.
Because that'd be great. So until next week, we'll see you guys soon. Take care. And remember that it's really good to discern the news that you're hearing in a spiritual perspective. See you soon. To keep the enthusiasm going, please like, subscribe, or comment below. We would love to hear from you.